Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I, 34 male, grew up in a pretty typical middle-class family. My parents worked hard and managed to buy a nice house in a decent neighborhood. I have a younger sister, Emily, 32 female, who, let's just say, could do no wrong in their eyes. Growing up, I was the one who was pushed to excel in school, to get a good job, and to be responsible. Emily, on the other hand, was always the one being coddled and catered to, no matter what she did. She didn't have the same pressure on her and was always given more leniency and support. When I went off to college, my parents helped me out a little, but I mostly had to rely on scholarships, loans, and part-time jobs to get by. Emily, however, got a free ride from them, tuition paid, rent paid, even a monthly allowance. I didn't complain much because I was happy to be independent, but it did sting knowing that my efforts were never as appreciated as her needs. Fast forward a few years, Emily got pregnant unexpectedly. Her boyfriend at the time was not the most reliable guy. But my parents jumped into action. They decided that Emily needed the family house more than they did. They told me they were downsizing to a smaller apartment to save money and give the house to Emily so she could have a safe and stable environment to raise her child. I was shocked. I mean, I get wanting to help her, but they literally gave her the house, no strings attached, not even asking her to pay the mortgage or anything. I asked my parents how they were planning to afford this smaller apartment, since they were both retired by then and living off their savings and a modest pension. They assured me they had it all figured out and that everything would be fine. They moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment across town, and Emily moved into the family house with her boyfriend. Fast forward a few more years. Emily now has 3 kids with 2 different fathers. She's still living in the house that my parents gave her. I've been living my life, got a decent job, and bought my own small house. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I've been financially independent for years and rarely asked my parents for anything. Meanwhile, Emily's financial situation is a mess. She's always borrowing money from my parents, and they keep bailing her out. Recently, I got a frantic call from my parents. They were being evicted from their apartment because they hadn't paid rent in months. Apparently, they had been giving almost all their spare money to Emily to help with her bills and kids, and they fell behind on their own rent. They begged me to let them move in with me temporarily, just until they got back on their feet. I was stunned. I asked them why they didn't move back into the family house. They sheepishly admitted that Emily said there was no room for them now that she had 3 kids. I couldn't believe it. My sister, who got a house for free, couldn't make room for our parents, who were now facing eviction because of her. It was mind-boggling. I decided to have a sit-down with my parents and Emily. I asked Emily why she couldn't let them stay in the house, even temporarily. She got defensive and said that the kids needed their space and it would be too disruptive. My parents just sat there quietly, not backing me up at all. I realized that they would rather guilt me into taking them in than confront Lily and risk upsetting her. It was like they were scared of her or something. I told my parents I wasn't sure if it was a good idea for them to move in with me. I work from home and need my space, and honestly, I've grown used to living alone. I told them they should try to work something out with Emily, who has much more space than I do. That's when they started crying and telling me how I was being selfish, how they had always supported me, debatable, and how family is supposed to help each other. I pointed out that they only seemed to apply that rule when it came to helping Emily. They got quiet, and then my dad said, "Well, she needs it more." Now, my parents are practically begging me to let them move in. They've been couch surfing at a friend's place, but it's not sustainable. Emily hasn't offered any real help, other than sending them a few groceries. My parents are making me feel like the worst son in the world for not immediately saying yes to them. They keep bringing up how they gave up their house for Emily, and how they never asked me for anything. Not true. And how I'm in a better financial position to help. I feel torn. On one hand, they are my parents, and they are in a bad spot. On the other hand, they made their bed when they decided to give away their house, and then continued to support Emily at their own expense. I feel like they've spent their entire lives favoring Emily, and now they're expecting me to clean up the mess that's resulted from that. I talked to a few friends about this, and opinions are mixed. Some think I'm justified in standing my ground, saying that my parents enabled Emily, and now they are facing the consequences. Others think I should suck it up and help them out, at least temporarily, because they're family, and it's the right thing to do. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my parents move in with me after they gave their house to my golden child sister and now face eviction? Update. After reading some of your comments and thinking things through, I decided to offer my parents a compromise. I told them I'd be willing to help them find a smaller, more affordable place, and even help cover some of the initial costs, like the deposit and first month's rent. But I wouldn't be able to let them move in with me permanently. They didn't take it well. They accused me of abandoning them in their time of need, and said that Emily was right about me being selfish and ungrateful. I'm not sure where we go from here. I feel like I'm being punished for not being the golden child, and for trying to live my life independently. My parents are still pressuring me, and I'm feeling the strain. But I also know that letting them move in would be a long-term commitment that I'm just not ready for, especially given how they've treated me over the years. OP's parents made their bed, and now they have to lie in it. It's sad that they are in this situation, but they chose to enable OP's sister instead of being financially responsible. It's not fair for them to demand that OP fixes the mess they made. OP needs to stand his ground. OP's parents need to understand that actions have consequences. And now let's hear the community's opinion. This is a tough one, OP. I'm a father, and I can understand wanting to help your children, but there has to be a line. Your parents crossed that line a long time ago by continuously bailing out your sister at their own expense. It's not your responsibility to bail them out now. Maybe suggest they speak to a financial planner or seek some legal advice, but letting them move in with you will just shift the burden to you. Wow, I totally relate to this. My sibling is also the golden child, and my parents always favored them no matter what. It's frustrating because you're always expected to pick up the slack. Honestly, not the a-hole. They should have thought about their own future instead of constantly rescuing your sister. You're not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. I don't know, OP. I feel for your parents, and if I were in your shoes, I might at least consider letting them stay temporarily, with clear rules and a timeline. Maybe use it as a chance to have an open conversation about how their choices have affected you. That said, not the a-hole for wanting to protect your own space and mental health. It's your house, your rules. I won the lottery a few years ago. Not the jackpot, the next one down. Once I sorted out the fees from winning and had covered myself and my kids, bought a house, paid off debts, set up savings, etc., I gave several friends and family members a tidy sum each. I had been accepted into a top university when I was 18, but hadn't gone as I'd had my oldest, of 2, and married his father, so I decided to look into going after I'd won. But ideally, I wanted to pay my own fees, not go through loans, and own a place in the area so I had that security. But this move would come with a much higher cost of living overall, and house prices there were about 4 times what they were in my area, and that's a conservative estimate. Then I found out that Granddad was delaying his retirement due to the cost of living. I ran the numbers, and I couldn't do both, so I split what was left between myself and Granddad, allowing him to retire. I never mentioned this to him explicitly, but he'd known I was looking into uni and then stopped when I split the cash, and he refused to take it initially and had tried to give it back a few times, to which I said if he tried, I would never speak to him again. Granddad passed away last year, and he left me just about everything. He also wrote a letter where he brought up my threat of never speaking to him again if he repaid me. So this was his way of repaying me while also getting a laugh at my expense. He also told me to go back to school, which I did. I've been accepted at a top university, arranged the move, and kids and I are settled in our new home, and I have a nice amount of money left, including the tuition fees that I will be paying myself. My younger brother, I have 2, older and younger, thinks this is BS. The way he sees it, Granddad heavily favored me for no good reason, stiffing him in the process as he only got a token sum to stop him contesting, same as everyone else, and that he needs the money just as much as I do. He also mentioned that the way Granddad went about it was literally a joke. Never speak to him again, and is using that as proof that Granddad didn't expect me to keep the money as it was just done for a joke. He's asked me for money, which I've refused as he asked for a really high figure and is saying I have to help him out. I've explained that this is just Granddad repaying me, which he said was disgusting, as I had given a gift with strings attached to a frail old man, and when I said he misunderstood and tried to clear it up, he wouldn't hear it. While the family are very careful to not take sides, It's clear they're upset with me, and my brother is really angry. I don't want to lose any of them, but I also can't just give him money like I could when I initially won all those years ago. Is there a way to say that I don't want to talk about this anymore, and I'll see what I can do when I can afford to without angering my brother further and stopping him pushing for this money? You gave up your dreams to help your granddad live a better life in his later years. Your granddad has given you those dreams back. Consider it a return on an investment if you want, but take it and look after yourself the way granddad wanted you to. Your brother has already had a significant chunk of money from you, so consider the well to be dry now. You have your own children to think of now, and if using your inheritance to get an education improves their standard of life, then that's what you do. They are more important than your brother's entitlement. Your brother needs to understand the difference between need the money and want the money. He's obviously just jealous, and that's not going to change since you won the lottery. And also, receiving an estate isn't about need. It's about the fact that your grandfather thought you deserved it. It's not anyone else's right to say yay or nay to that. It was his wish. The way I see it, if you had never won the lottery, your grandpa would have had to work X more years to retire. And when he died, he would have left Y amount of money to each grandkid. So your brother lost out on Y amount of money so that grandpa could retire early. And now your brother is basically saying he would have preferred grandpa had to work those extra years, just so your brother could collect grandpa's money when he dies. That's pretty ducking morbid. You've been honest with your brother, and he refuses to care. The only thing he cares about is himself. You and your grandpa got lucky. If your brother had won that lottery money, I get the impression nobody would have benefited from it except him. Mother-in-law is getting married tonight, and my husband and I will not be attending, because the price to do so is just outrageous. I know she thinks we hate her, and that I don't want him to go, but that is pretty far from the truth. She is having a destination wedding in the Caribbean, and it is New Year's Eve, so everything is crazy expensive. We did look at accommodations near where the wedding will be, and it was just insane. I'm 5 months pregnant, and we're saving for the baby right now. I personally feel like holiday weddings and destination weddings are okay if you're willing to accept a large number of guests won't be able to make it. If you can't accept that, don't have one, and she is having both. Anyway, the family has been passive-aggressive. Mother-in-law was encouraged not to give us anything when I have my baby shower if we can't be bothered to go to her wedding, among other jokes clearly painting us in the wrong. Mother-in-law's sister called this morning to yell at us. She said there is still time with these cancellations. She said we were being petty by missing it. I finally lost it and told her that mother-in-law is just a master manipulator. If she truly cared about having her son there, who is young and just getting established in life, she would offer to pay. If she can afford this wedding, she could afford that. I saw my husband's jaw drop because it is a big thing in his family that you never ever ask for money. So I knew I had embarrassed him. Mother-in-law's sister called me trashy and hung up. My husband said she's going to tell everyone, and they're going to talk crap because I know how his family feels about anything which could be seen as entitlement with money. He says I took it too far and not going is enough. Not the a-hole. I stopped at 5 months pregnant. You don't need to spend thousands just to be at her wedding. She chose to have it somewhere far away and can stream it for free. Not the a-hole. Who the duck expects a young couple with a baby on the way to spend a ludicrous amount of money just to attend a wedding? In my opinion, if you not being there bothers them so much, they should all offer to pitch in and pay for you. That's what a good family would do. Not the a-hole. The ones with entitlement towards money are all the people giving you crap for it. They're the ones feeling entitled to you spending your money on something. A destination wedding is a big bill to pay for attendees. Reasonable people who have them don't get upset if everyone can attend, and will also go out of their way to provide the best resources for flights and accommodation. It's really common for a destination wedding to pay the way for some family members too, especially those that may struggle to afford it. Did you explain to mother-in-law that you couldn't go because it was too expensive? Yes, she just said okay. I heard her fiancé making a joke about how are we this broke with all of the opportunities she has given her son, and he implied he thinks we are lying. 28 male. My sister, 45, and I co-own a house together. It was a duplex, but we ripped out the wall in the living room years ago, so now it's one big house. She has 2 girls. My wife and I have 2 boys, and 1 on the way. It's a giant house. There's still 3 extra bedrooms left over. My sister recently has been pretty much conning my wife into taking her daughters with her everywhere. She does this every so often, honestly. She takes needing a break to the extreme, and it's always when the warm weather hits, because my sister is really overweight, gets overheated, and can't handle her children during these times. No offense to my sister. So anyways, she's been asking my wife pretty much daily to take the girls with her every single place she goes. My wife ends up feeling cornered, doesn't like confrontation, and just gives in. And what really pissed me off was that this even bled into my children's first ever concert. We got tickets well in advance, and unfortunately, I ended up breaking my hip and couldn't go, so there was a ticket left over. I was destroyed over not being able to go. I was in the hospital, but my wife decided to still bring the boys. And she calls when they got there, and I find out that my sister basically told my wife how unfair it was, that there was an extra ticket that her oldest daughter could use, and she didn't even ask to bring her. Needless to say, the kid ended up being taken to the concert, and by the time my wife got to the concert and called me, she was crying and completely overwhelmed and didn't even enjoy herself. My niece has ADHD and is one hell of a handful, so there was no relaxing. I got home 2 days ago and went up one side of my sister and down the other. Told her that she had to take our kids this weekend, so my wife could go and relax after being conned into parenting 2 extra kids for so long and not getting a single stroke of a second to herself. My sister was pissed, saying my wife could have just said no, but my sister never takes no for an answer, so this response was truly manipulative. In turn, I told her I'm selling my portion of the house, which means she would have to sell or convert back to a duplex, which they don't have the money for, because I don't want to be around her BS anymore. She's been begging and crying to us for 2 days, trying to take our kids and kissing our butts, but I have to stick to this because I don't trust her. This home has been in our family for 6 to 8 generations, so my sister doesn't want to sell. Am I the a-hole? Edited to add, while I can appreciate people saying that this is an open-ended thread on my end, and that I would be responsible for the cost of converting back to a duplex, please understand that I've already spoken to a few lawyers about this. I thought the same thing. And no, it's not on me financially to do this because of how the co-ownership deed is written. I'm not sure the in-depth legalities, but I did speak on behalf of this issue profusely because I too thought it would be my obligation to rebuild the duplex with my intention to sell. But legally, it is not on me, for whatever reason. Not the a-hole. You are all insane people for tearing down that wall in the first place. Not the a-hole. What your sister has been doing to your wife is pretty scummy. I'm honestly surprised that you let it get to the point where you were so fed up you decided to sell the house though. Either way, she needs to take responsibility for her own children and not have the ability to corner your wife into doing it for her. Not the a-hole. Families need their space, and these co-living arrangements rarely work out. Even if your sister were to correct her behavior, this isn't doable long term. Is one option for your sister to buy you out with a mortgage, fix the wall and rent out the other side? That way, she would only have half a mortgage, some rental income to offset, wouldn't have to move, and the family duplex could stay in the family. I, 30 female, have a stepsister, Chloe, 32 female, who is married to Joe, 34 male. They have a son, Liam, 4, and my husband and I have a daughter, Ava, 3. Joe, Chloe, Liam, and our parents, her dad, my mom, came to visit my husband and me at our home abroad last week, as there's lots of events going on here and good weather. We all had a good time, but it was obvious Joe and Chloe were having some issues, both with Liam and each other. Nothing serious, just tension, and a few snide remarks about Liam's behavior and Chloe's appearance from Joe. Over the weekend, we all went out to have lunch and then watch a local event with the intention of attending a party afterwards. It was a long day, with 3 distinct parts to it, so I had clothes to change. I changed before lunch, and when I came down to lunch, Joe said I looked nice. I said thanks, thinking that would be the end of it. But he launched into a whole rant, at the table with everyone there, about how he wished Chloe would make more of an effort with her appearance, how she still had baby weight, never thought about it, how she looked, or how he felt being out with her, and how since I managed to keep myself together while having a husband who is never around, it obviously can be done. It was incensed. This greasy gnome had insulted 3 of the 5 adults in front of our parents and the kids. I told Joe I married a husband and a father, not an extra child, and he provides support, not excuses. If I was a single parent with a 9-to-5 and you to come home to, I wouldn't look like this. That is a reflection of your failures, not Chloe's. Joe grumbled that he was only making a point, But my stepdad said that everyone needed to calm down and we should just get on with our meal, which we did. Joe stayed away from pretty much everyone for the rest of the afternoon, while Chloe sat with us but was sullen and withdrawn. When I tried to talk to her about what happened, she blew up at me, saying I insulted her and Joe's situation with the way I spoke to him. I said I never intended to embarrass her, unlike her husband, and that Joe had insulted me also by turning me into some archaic fantasy. Chloe was still angry and said I had proved his point, and made it worse by making her look like she was married to an idiot, and I should have just brushed it off. I gave up trying to talk to her, and the rest of the trip was awkward between us. My parents say I'm not the a-hole, but my husband says I sort of was. He absolutely supports everything I said, but agrees with Chloe that by defending myself, Chloe became collateral damage. I don't think I'm in the wrong because what Joe said was weird and demeaning, and it did involve me. It's not like I gave some unsolicited or untrue response. That said, some of my friends also think I should have just let it go, since I wasn't the most insulted party. Not the a-hole. You didn't make her look like she married an idiot. She married an idiot. You know this already, but not the a-hole. Your brother-in-law is a huge a-hole. But it sounds like your sister and her husband are having more than some issues if he uses you to hurt her. Maybe your sister needs someone to be there for her. Not the a-hole. I don't understand why Chloe is mad at you, who actually defended her, instead of the man who insulted her and her family. When things settle down, have a chat with Chloe. See what is on her mind and if she needs any help, if you want to help her. My younger sister, 11 female, has a rare medical condition. I won't say the name of the condition because not a lot of people have it. Anyway, she got diagnosed when she was 9 and when I was 16. It didn't really affect me at first. That is until her first surgery. It was understandable that my mom and dad were worried and were always at the hospital. I was always left at home alone with the responsibility to cook, clean, do responsibility, with no one else there to help. 1 week of this was enough. My sister was discharged and everything went back to normal for 6 months. 6 months later, at 3 a.m., my parents and sister left to go to the hospital and left me this note. Hi, your sister had a relapse. We're at the hospital. You can either walk or get a ride to your volleyball game today. Love, Mom and Dad. I was hurt because this was the biggest game of the season and no one was there to watch me, but I understood that health came first. We won the game and my neighbors felt so bad for me they had me over for dinner. They hate having people over. A few days later, my sister got discharged. 2 months later, she had to be rushed to the ER because of an emergency, and my parents told me they wanted the house clean by the time they got home. I obeyed, and they were pleased. Fast forward to now, 2 years later. I got drafted to one of the biggest volleyball teams in my area, and I wanted my family to see me play at the championship game. My mom said no, and that my sister had an appointment that day. She made the appointment yesterday, when she's known about my game for months. She's also been putting off meeting my girlfriend, saying that she needs to be available if my sister needs anything. Today I finally snapped. I said how ever since I was 16, I've been pushed to the side, picked on, and ignored. The least you could do is have dinner with me and my girlfriend, or come see me play volleyball for once. She said I was being an entitled brat, and she told me not to call her until I fixed my attitude. I just wanted to feel good about myself for once, but was I being an a-hole here? Not the a-hole. It sucks what your sister is going through, but the fact that your mom made an appointment on the day of your tournament, because, and I'll be honest, she doesn't care about you the same way as your sister. She's basically treated you as a skivvy, because she could. Because to her, nothing is as important as your sister, and that does include you. She neglected you in favor of your sister, who can do nothing about this, so she's also the victim too. Your mom reminds me of the mom in My Sister's Keeper. To her, nothing is more important than her sick child, even pushing out the healthy one, because all eyes are on the sick one. It's what she lives for. I bet when your sister is healthy, pre-relapse, she still gets all the attention. Do anything you can to get out of there and go low contact. I'm gonna say not the a-hole. It's understandable your mama is worried about your sister, but it does seem like she's neglecting your emotional needs. What you asked for isn't too unreasonable. Not the a-hole. I'm sorry that you were neglected, as it so often happens when one sibling is sick. But it doesn't excuse what your parents did to you. Your mom is blatantly ignoring how you are feeling, and she's an a-hole for that. She will refuse to face her own actions that caused you to feel like this.